Welcome back to the Daughters of the Moon podcast. We're grateful that you can join us for another week.
We sure are.
And we're excited today. We have Eric Turnnessen on with us. He's a composer of orchestral and mystical music and spiritual guide dedicated to empowering individuals by helping them connect with their higher selves and true essence. As an energy intuitive and spiritual seeker, Eric has journeyed across the globe, immersing himself in ancient practices, wisdom, and healing modalities. So, welcome, Eric. We're excited to have you on the podcast today.
Yeah, I'm excited to be here. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, you're welcome. So, can you tell us a little bit about how your journey of how you got started in this and what's kind
Mm.
of moved you towards doing this?
Sure. So, music was a part of my life from very early. There's a lot of details that go into that, but I guess the first milestone as far as being a composer started when I was 14. I accidentally discovered a piece of software on the family computer where you could put some notes on a staff sheet and then you press the space bar and it would play it back. And it was just one of those moments where it was just very clear, like, oh, I'm going to be doing this. I mean, I didn't, in my mind at that time, that's not what I thought, but just like from that moment, I was then composing and I was pretty much self-taught all throughout middle school and high school and college. I just wrote a lot of music. And, sometimes when I listen back to that music now, I still wonder how I wrote it. And that's been kind of one of the challenging parts of the journey of being a composer and artist is that I don't feel like I can wield it like a sword. It's kind of something that comes when it comes, and it kind of have to open myself up to it and allow it to flow in. And the spiritual side, I met my guru 10 years ago in 2015, was initiated into a lineage of Kundalini Mahayoga. And from that point, 10 years ago, I haven't missed a day of doing my practices. I've been to India a few times, did 40 days in silence, doing some 8 hours of practice a day. That's just, I don't say that to be like, oh, this huge measuring stick, but just to give a taste of like, I've done some things and, uh, and from developing into more of a spiritual relationship with myself, I then go back and I look at music through that lens and I see that like music was really my first meditation teacher. Because when I wrote music, I could get lost for 6 hours writing music, and it could feel like 6 minutes. And I really had that sense of like the effortless effort, right? Because there's stuff happening, and yet I'm not the one doing it. And that's now coming into this time in my life that really is all these paths are weaving together where the lessons that I learned from that and the lessons from the spiritual practices are really giving the perspective of being a composer of life and like coming at it from this perspective of, I know what it's like when I'm writing music. I sit down, I open myself up to some sort of intuitive channel, and then I act from that place, but it's not me acting. And to me, it's all frequency and energy and vibration. And so it, it's become like a really big playground for me to kind of like witness myself, to practice moving through life in this sense of like, what music am I writing in life, right? In quotes, symbolically, what music am I writing through my actions? And it becomes a lot more about a listening process than like an egotistical, goal oriented, I want to make this happen. But again, it's very nuanced because, of course, goals and plans and stuff can also be part of the action. So that's just a little overview.
That's very interesting. So, when you did the 40 days of silence, then did that help you really to tune into your inner like connection to the divine source and just like really tap into like your intuitive way to create music?
Yeah. I mean, I recall about halfway through that the first time I did it, I started navigating the world in a different way. Like when I was walking around, I felt, I'll use these words just for the sake of like illustrating it, but it didn't it wasn't a mental concept like this at the time. But there was kind of like a fifth sense that kind of got introduced where I could kind of navigate based on energy. Like I could feel things and they weren't visual, but they would mm, somehow in my experience they got interpreted in a sense of like they were visual. Like I would move around things based on like feeling more energy. So the one way I put it or visualize it is kind of like normal life is like the sun being out in high noon. It's very potent. And then when I took this time to really quiet myself and be in stillness in that deep way, the sun goes down and then the stars come out. And it's not that the stars were never there. It's just that now, because I'm turning towards it, I can perceive these more subtle aspects of being. And so, yeah, and it hasn't really left me since that time. And it's just deepened and having the blend of like navigating the world based on, of course, like what my five senses take in, but also um, these more subtle, energetic relationships that I'm building.
Yeah. That's very interesting. And I love how, you know, you're so in tune and then that music just flows through you and just
Mhm.
becomes something very, you know, mystical and very just divine almost.
Yeah. And the interesting thing about my music is if like and I'll share some clips later on in this conversation, but like um my music is kind of like a mm, what I've written at every time in my life relates to something about my journey at that time. So early on in my life, I was really into orchestral music. I listened to a lot of film scores. So and I've always been intrigued by the marriage of music and picture, you know, and the emotional impact of music. And I tend to appreciate a lot of uplifting music and things like this. And even some of the compositions that I've written that I consider very uplifting now, I wrote at a time in my life where I was grieving something or I needed um, some upliftment. But the thing is, that uplifting music came through me, even though I personally wasn't feeling that at the time. So it's just interesting how it always comes to me in the medicine that I need. And then I've learned to trust more and more that if it's coming to me and it's medicine for me, then it can be medicine for other people. And so after I started my spiritual path, tangibly, um, my music shifted to be more like, you know, Native American flute and shamanic drumming and Tibetan singing bowls and voice and, you know, a lot more mm, peaceful, relaxing, spiritual music. So, because that's just where I was in my journey. And now they're kind of like blending together. But the focus is really to bring this out into the world more and share it. And so that's a big part of the focus at this time.
So do you share it strictly streaming it, or do you have CDs that you also sell and that kind of thing to promote yourself?
Mm. I share mostly digitally, so but I have a YouTube channel.
Okay,
I'm on all the streaming platforms, and I also do live events,
okay.
which and live events really intrigue me because ultimately I think the whole point is changing state, coming into presence. Because for me, I believe that all healing happens in the present moment. So if we can come into the present moment and use whatever devices that we can, whether that's music or a meditation technique or whatever, um, coming to the present moment is ultimately what creates the possibility for healing at whatever level to happen. So I really am moving more towards doing a lot more live things, like doing at medicine journeys, my music is already being played at certain medicine journeys, but I'm also receiving invitations to go and do live things at these meditation in these spaces. But I'm also working towards producing a full orchestral concert next year, which is a huge undertaking, and it's not something I necessarily feel like is going to be an ongoing thing that I'm going to be doing. But who knows? I don't know. I just do the things I'm excited about, and we'll see where it takes me. But yeah, streaming platforms, YouTube, and I also share a lot of behind the scenes content. So when I record with an orchestra, I really recognize it as a privilege to do that, and um, I just naturally have the desire to capture the process so that I can share it with other composers like me who are interested in orchestral music and having their music recorded, or just people who are generally interested in how things are made. And I share all that stuff on my YouTube channel and my Patreon too.
Uh, when I look at you, all I see is tuba class and music notes coming out of your head, sort of thing. So you must be just full of information in there for music, because that's what I see coming out from you. So you must be an ideas person for sure. That you put in. I love music. I work out to it. I just have to have it in my day somewhere in order to make me feel like I belong.
Yeah.
It plants
Mm.
me.
Yeah, thank you for that reflection. I mean, and it's interesting. Like I've been composing for 30 years, but I'm not formally trained, and um, I've struggled with that at certain times in my life where I felt like an imposter. Like the first time I recorded with an orchestra 3 years ago, I was sitting there. Like, of course, it was like somatically, I was like feeling all this excitement and just like it's amazing. But I was also like feeling like, who am I to be here? Like like I can't write music. Like I don't know what I'm doing, you know. So it's like, and I don't, but I think that I, what's different now is I learned to just be like, well, you know what? Somehow it comes when it comes, and I don't have control over it. But like, we'll see. Like I don't have to know where it's going or know where it's taking me.
You're trusting.
Exactly. Yeah.
I think sometimes too, the best and most soulful, like that speaks to your soul music really does come from people that are not classically trained and just use that intuition to move them and just allow that to flow through them. So I love that are not classically trained and that this is just being so genuine because I think there's so much room for music to talk to our souls and help us release emotions and just really be captured in by them, and I think what you do is a real essence of that.
Yeah. Thank you. I really do believe that like there's been different times when I'm listening to music and I have my eyes closed and I just feel like whatever that space is where music is coming from and it exists within me, or it's closer to who I am than the physical aspects. It just feels like it's because it's frequency and vibration. I mean, it just feels like home to me, and it always has. I remember, even before I was composing music early in life, I would be, laying down by the record player and just getting lost in listening to Stravinsky's Firebird or Vivaldi Four Seasons or Mozart symphonies or whatever. And to me, I experience them as like sonic landscapes. They're not like, and I wonder, like, I wonder how other people experience music, but like for me, they're worlds, like, and I can move around in them, um, and they affect my state, and then that state comes back and affects the physical. It's not like, yeah. So I'd be curious, if that resonate, if that's something that other people experience, if you guys experience that.
Absolutely. I can get lost in music very easily. And it just takes me in all those different places. And I think that music has a way of getting to the parts of us that needs attention. And it depends on how the music is and what it's giving you. But I find for me, if I'm in a mood and I want to be in a different place from the mood I'm in, I can play a tune of some sort and it can walk me right into where I want to go. so easily. So I think what you're doing is really interesting because you're showing people how they can find their source of where they need to be to let their mind, I guess, guide them to where they need to look at to find their spirituality, maybe, or even to sphere um, to feel the flow. I think is where I'm trying to go with that. So I think what you're doing is great. I can't wait to hear some of your music you have.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How about you, Kim?
And I find music for me is really almost meditative,
It is.
meditative. So I can get very lost in music. And what I love about it is then it kind of shuts out the outside world
That too.
and just allows me to really tap into the inner parts of myself and just really let some emotions go. Because sometimes you're listening to music and I'm crying and I'm like, oh, geez, I wasn't sad, but obviously there was something in my body that needed to be released. And so I just really love that music can just flow through us and just really become part of us and vibrate with us.
Yeah,
Because I
touches.
find it just vibrates within me
Yeah.
when I'm listening to music.
Hmm.
Yeah.
You were going to say something, Barb?
Yeah, I find that music touches me in all different ways. And it's like a pebble in the water sort of thing. Just dropping that pebble in touches me and it radiates around me and makes me feel so good. I'm a
Yeah.
music person. These kids, both my kids grew up with music pretty much every day, and we challenged each other on music during their lives too. Um, just because I was a single mom raising two kids, and it just gave us another inspiration of a day, right? And momentum. So, do I like music? Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
I think there's a reason that it's always been around as far as humans has been around, right? Like because it's like for me it's like I said, it connects me to a part of me that I feel like is closer to home. I think the reason it is healing is because it bypasses all of the ways that we cover up our true selves, and it goes straight to the source, which also is a reason to be very cautious about the types of music you listen to, because it does go straight there. Have you guys heard of the Dr. Moto water studies?
Yes.
I have not.
So in case, yeah, for people who haven't, they're basically it's really amazing if you look it up on Google, EMOTO, Dr. Moto, and just type water. But he basically took pictures of water crystals under microscopes and did all sorts of experiments. He would play classical music and he would play like certain other types of music. I'm not going to say what kinds because I don't, just, but the classical made these beautiful crystals and the other types of music, made uh, disjointed, jagged, like crystals. Um, and then the really crazy part is like he got to a point where he would just send intentions to the water. So saying, I love you to one and I hate you to the other. And the same thing happened. Um, and so taking that, like intuitively, when I first saw that, I was like, okay, like, our bodies are X percent water, like above 80%, whatever it is. When we expose ourselves to different vibrational content, it's going to have an impact on our physical structure. And so to be very conscious and cautious about what we expose ourselves to, whether that's in a prescriptive sense of like music or like what we tune into in terms of content and media and all this other stuff, like all of that stuff. I mean, ultimately it's all sound. And so, we may conceptualize it in our mind, but like, and I feel like sound carries, it's like a carrier of intention. So, when I write the music for myself, maybe it's like, it may like, and actually this is an interesting thought. I haven't thought about this recently, but there's some music what I wrote when I was like, I had just been writing music for like 4 or 5 years. It was super early. But some of that music, when I listen to it now, even though like my mind is like, oh, this is wrong with it, this is, technically speaking, it still has a positive impact on me. And some of my favorite music that I wrote early on in my life, as I got better at technology and how to actually produce music, I was like, oh, I love that song. I'm going to recreate it But the thing is, like when I tried to recreate it, it didn't work. So to me, what I took away from that is like it doesn't really matter what the ultimate vehicle was, whether it was like the super dated sound card, like old video game sounding sounds that I did when I was first writing music versus like the super high tech sample libraries that I use today. It's not about how good the tools are. It's like what was the energy that was flowing in through me at that time, and it somehow it's that energy lives on today. It's like an aura around these artifacts of the music that's been created.
Mhm.
And that's allowed me to let go and be like, well, it doesn't matter. Like it's not about being perfect. It's just about being present. And and so yeah, that's been an interesting discovery.
I feel like that's a really important message is about the being present because I think I love Dr. Emoto's work and I just found it fascinating as well, right? Like just how just that sound vibrated towards the water and the look of the crystals when you looked at it when it was like love and this
They all
yes
changed.
classical music and stuff like it was beautiful
Yeah.
and then when it was hate and stuff it was just like so
Right.
like condensed and just yeah not pretty looking
Yeah.
but I think like we're evolving all the time. And so I think it's really important when we are listening to music or being in a conversation with someone or something to really be present and to really allow that sound to, vibrate within
Resonate.
us.
Yeah.
So I loved what you said about being present because that's a big thing. I think that in today's world, sometimes we don't often be present in a situation.
That's
Well, it
true.
takes some learning to be present. I mean, I know in my journey, when I first sat down to meditate 10 years ago, it was a very challenging experience for me. Um, Even though, I'd had, these moments with music, but to sit with oneself is, I mean, one way I choose to believe is what's happening here is the world is reflective. It's not that there's this external world that exists, and I'm moving around it. It's that it's being created with each one of us, and therefore what comes into our world are messages for us, and what relationships pop in, all the synchronicities that happen, like these are us reflecting back to ourselves things about ourselves. And if we're willing to listen to that, the work can become more and more subtle and it can become even energetic, and the external world isn't required to then beat us over the head. But if we are not listening, then it might require mm, some more tangible lessons, more forceful lessons to show up, and repetitive. Like if we end up in the same type of relationship over and over again, the same type of situation over and over again, if we don't learn from it or take away something, it'll come back again, but it'll come back a little stronger.
Mhm.
And it'll come back stronger because ultimately it's a compassionate approach, because it starts off gentle, gives us the opportunity to see where we're stuck. But then if we don't hear it, it'll gently get louder, because the whole point is it's all about love and presence. And each of us has a unique journey that we've chose to go on, and um, we're going to be tested in exactly the ways that we chose to be tested in. And and so it's but yeah, like presence is ultimately the place where everything is transformed.
Yeah. I would agree with that 100%. So do you think that some of your attraction to the Kundalini yoga, I know because there's a lot of chanting and things like that in it, do you feel like that was also because of your love for music?
Well, I want to be careful because I know Kundalini yoga is a particular thing. That's not what my lineage is. I'm in
Okay.
Kundalini Maha Yoga, which I'm not too familiar with the Kundalini yoga lineage, but I do know that what I'm doing is not that. Um, but to answer your question, like I actually wasn't looking for a guru. It all kind of happened by mistake, right? Uh, you know, the short story is I thought I was going to a weekend retreat, um, you know, just like a meditation retreat, and that's it. A friend had told me about it, and I felt in my body like, oh yeah, I'll go to that. And something about my personality is if I feel like a yes to something, I don't research it. I just trust that, and I'm like, I'm just gonna go. Sometimes, most of the time, that works out for me. Sometimes it doesn't, but in the grand scheme of things, it always works out for me. Um, but yeah, so I didn't look into it. But ultimately, what ended up happening is that weekend retreat was an initiation. And, you know, by the end of it, they're like, okay, so here's the practices you'll do the rest of your life. And there was a moment where I was like, because I hadn't done, I was just new into meditation, maybe a month at that point. So again, you know, of course, perfect timing. I was prepared a little bit through like this Buddhist meditation I was doing, and then I ended up at this thing. But I had a kind of like a 2 seconds of shock, and I was like, okay, this makes sense. And then I just accepted it and it went from there. So I I appreciate though in the lineage that I'm a part of that there is a focus on mantra. Um, although at this point I have an even more subtle relationship, like even beyond mantra with energy and things. I mean, I think mantra is great. And also I recognize that mantra is still training wheels. It's not it's again, it's a guide. It's guide, everything is guiding inward at a more and more subtle level, you know. And mantra is one of the ways. It's a mechanism to help the mind, you know, um, calm itself and give it something to play with, like we give a baby some keys to play with if it's crying. It's the same, one of the same concepts. It's definitely deeper than that because there is vibrational energy. There is what's called Chaitan mantra, which is activated mantra. When you have it from a lineage, it's activated with all of the energy of that lineage. So it is a lot more powerful than just like looking up a mantra on the internet. But the whole point is all of this is meant to get us to come to the realization that we're not the body. And once that realization happens, then who's the one doing a mantra,
Yeah,
right?
exactly. Well, and I think sometimes people too like these mantras or like these breathing meditations and things like that because it gives you something to focus on.
Yep.
And and that helps to quiet your mind because a lot of people have such a hard time quieting their minds and being in silence and just being present with themselves. And I always find it interesting to watch people, like, not watch them, but yes, watch them just, sometimes struggle with it because it's like, oh, okay, well, they,
Yeah.
have some more lessons that they need to learn about this. But, like you said, like even with these little training wheels that we can teach them how to do this so that they can move forward.
Yeah. And it's not, and, and I get lost too. Like I think when I sat down to meditation this morning, I was lost and I realized that I've been lost for part of this week because I did a big launch beginning of this week with my Patreon, and there's been like all these details, like all these details. So my mind has been very engaged. And so I sat down this morning and I knew, like I can feel now when I'm like I visualize it like you know, like I am, right?
Mhm.
Spirit. And then coming into the objective, the this world is like taking a breath and diving down into the water. Like I'm, you know, like it's a conscious choice. Like I come into it, I get lost, I interact with everything, and but at some point, like you know, I need to remember, oh, like I'm underwater now. I need to come back up and take a breath. This is where I'm at with my practice. Like ultimately, that's still a mental concept. Like, of course, we never leave spirit, but like I still am not there 100% of the time. And but I'm becoming more familiar with when I am um, getting lost in the content of experience. But that's the point. I mean, you know, that's not it's not bad if I am lost in it. That's why I'm here in a way. Um, but in my practice, like it's about like remembering that who is the one having this experience, like, and not 100% always identifying with being a body or being the thoughts or being the emotions. And it ultimately becomes a very playful process. Like, even though some of the sensations and experiences I can have can be what I would have called in the past, like painful or suffering. But if I have the right perspective about it, it's not as it's not that bad.
No, no. I understand what you're saying because it's sort of like a trance. You walk into something, because I do that when I'm doing my readings, like I know what I'm doing most of the time.
Yeah.
Sometimes I don't. But when I trance out, it's because the message needs to be delivered.
Mm.
It would be the same thing with your music sort of thing. You're following where the spirits want you to go in order to receive the information that they want you to put out there. Mine isn't in a musical way. Mine is through voice, through readings or something like that. But I find as I go along, it's getting easier and easier and to come in and out of it.
Yeah.
Except for sometimes I get stuck in it. But you realize that you're still there, but you're really involved with what's going on. And it's
Yeah.
an amazing moment.
And I feel like ultimately everybody is doing the same thing.
Yeah.
Like, and I think this is one of the lessons that I'm working on right now, is to just recognize that, because I did like the first 5 years of my spiritual journey, I was very much like masculine about it, like I am gonna get enlightened, I'm gonna do it. And I was very disciplined, and that's good, right? That was great. But I got to a point where, like, again, who is the one who's trying to get enlightened, right? Because we all already are, right? So who's the one who's trying to do it? And in a way, the spiritual path can guide away from that if they're not careful.
Yep.
So a big practice for me these days is, one, self-acceptance. Like, if something's going on with me, whether it's emotional or mental or whatever, like, accept that it is what it is. And then by extension, with everybody else. And that can be a harder practice, like when there's a lot of polarization in the world, and yet the practice being like, um at the core, we're all one. Like, really though, like, really, like, I know, like, we all talk about this, but like, what would that really mean if we were all one? Then if we're all the divine, then literally everything that anybody ever does is, that's their path, that's their journey, and it's to be acknowledged, honored. Like, I don't need to agree with it as my persona, like, and I don't need to go along with it, but I also don't need to attack people, because I realize, like, ultimately, if when I really pay attention to the mechanics of attacking somebody, it's an internal process. Like, I first have a dysregulation within me, which then moves out and is projected onto something external. So ultimately, again, like, we've heard this, but if I'm attacking somebody else, I'm attacking myself. And it's, again, like, I'm trying to take these things in my own life beyond bumper stickers, right? Like, what is the mechanics of this? Like, and and I think one of the real benefits of coming into deeper awareness of my own personal state is I stop blaming other people and I stop blaming the world, and then it becomes my responsibility. If something isn't right, it's me. It's not anything else. And and that's empowering, right? Because then I can do something about it, right? And I'm not for people listening to this, I'm not making a political statement here, because this isn't to say that we don't do things in the world and that our society, and we need to, work on structures. I'm not someone to talk about that. So don't extend what I'm saying into and imagine that I'm saying that, right?
Well, I love what you said, because I think that's the whole thing, is on this path that we're going on a spiritual level, is really living our truth and living And being in that, where you were saying with the bumper stickers, kind of made me giggle because it's so true, right? Like we, as spiritual people, especially when we first start getting into it, we just kind of are repeating these things we've heard. But then when we really step into it and start living that and embodying it, I think it changes where we come from. And,
Mhm.
just, I mean, I have my own meditation practice that I do every single morning, and it's important to me because it sets me up for my day different, for one.
Right.
And, yeah, I have some days where I'm good, I can find that space, and I have some
Mhm.
days where it
Can't find
eludes
it.
me, right? It's like, where is it? Like I can't, my
Right.
mind's too.
Because like bringing it back to music, right? Like if you were tuning our instruments, right? It's like we're every day we're going to perform our music, and like imagine if an orchestra got together and they didn't tune, it would sound horrible. Um, but yeah, and we do need to do it every day because I mean we're like I don't know what's going on here, right? But like there's a lot of different energies. Like we think about astrology, like astrology is one modality of like understanding that we are in a larger ecosystem of energetic influences. And maybe that's true, maybe that's not. I don't know. But certainly it I can experience for me personally, I do experience some things in astrology, but I again like I don't have direct knowledge of it. Um, but yeah, like who knows like what's actually happening when the sun goes down and we wake back up in the morning and we imagine that, oh, I went to sleep and then I woke up, but is that really what's happening? I don't know. But yeah, well, taking the first, like one of my teachers says, what's well begun is half done. So yeah, so um, doing the practices in the morning, like just and like never missing a day, like not it's not an option. But it can be modified to circumstance. Like if I'm traveling, if I have a flight at 4 o'clock in the morning, like I'll do different set of practices than when my morning is more free. But yeah, but the beautiful thing is like, we're not sitting here like suggesting that anybody should do anything different what they're doing, because the fact is like all rivers lead to the ocean. And that goes back to what I was saying about like just recognizing that acceptance of myself, acceptance of others, like because ultimately if I'm not accepting somebody else, it's them helping me see where I'm not accepting myself. That's what they're showing me. If I have resistance, that's how I take it anyway.
Mhm.
Um, and yeah, I mean we're all beautiful is, basically you know, and yeah, and we have compassion for ourselves and for others, because sometimes we don't see that. We don't see it in ourselves, and we don't see it in others sometimes. I I volunteer at a homeless kitchen every week,
Nice.
and this last Wednesday there was a woman there who I forget what was going on, but it was clear to me that she had a lot of stories about herself. Oh, she's a giver, right? She was helping everybody and um, giving and but she would every once in a while like say something nice about somebody, but then right after that she would say something about her, like she would talk herself down. And I noticed this mechanism. I do the same thing. Like I think we all do that. Like we're ready to give to other people, but when it comes to giving to ourselves, it's like, no, like I'm not good enough. I'm not.
Yeah.
So I just said to her, like you're perfect. And I could see somatically, like she couldn't hold that in her system. And she's like, yeah, well, but I have this stuff to do. I'm like, okay, but yeah, but you're perfect. And then she says, and then she tried to change the subject, something. I said, well, stop changing the subject. Like, you're perfect. And then she started to cry.
Ah,
But it's like, and I can feel myself help tearing up a little bit because like it's like we're the ones blocking ourselves from feeling the love. Like that's
yeah.
it's like and it's and it brings such compassion to myself and to others to realize that ultimately, like, we all want the same thing. What are we doing?
It's
Um,
so true. So true. I remember one time I was in a meditation class and she played this song by India Airy and it's called
mhm,
I Am Light. And
mhm. Well,
sat in it, sat in that meditation, listened to the song, cried so hard because when you
mhm,
truly are sitting in silence listening to that song, and it's like,
mhm.
it's hard to say, I am the light. And even
Yeah.
today, it still brings me emotions when I think about it because it's so hard to accept that about ourselves, like you were saying, that's what brought that to mind when you
But
were,
who's the one not accepting it? That's the question.
that's right.
Yeah.
That's exactly.
Because, and that's the whole game, right? Like, because we are the light, truly, and we can play the game with ourselves that we're not.
Yep.
Yeah.
And we
And
do.
yet we still are. It doesn't change the it doesn't change the fact.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Well, we'd love to hear some of your music.
Yes, we
Okay.
would.
All right.
Yeah, I would love to share it. So yeah, I've got four pieces, orchestral pieces, and these are things that I recorded with a 60-piece orchestra in England over the last 3 years. So I'll share those four, like just some short clips, like 20 to 30 seconds of each one. And
Perfect.
then I'll share four of my more like mystical shamanic music, which is all I think, either me singing, me playing the Native American flute, but it's all of that music is all, the notes were entered in by me in one
Wonderful.
form or another. All right, so we'll start. All right, here we go. Next one. All right, last one on orchestral. Okay, now we'll move to the mystical music.
That was absolutely beautiful. I was like, could feel all these different emotions in me when I was listening to it, right from the
First one.
orchestra right to the mystical. Like it was phenomenal.
Yeah, like
Thank you.
I thought really big stuff for you coming up.
Thank you.
Yeah, beautiful orchestrations. Oh my God. Good for
Mhm.
you. That's
Well,
a
thank you
big,
for letting me share it.
Yes, well, thank you for sharing it with everyone because
Mm.
it's absolutely breathtaking. So we appreciate that.
yeah.
So this hour is really rushed by and
Yes.
it's been terrific. Can you tell everybody where they can find you?
Yeah, ericturnessen.com. That's the and on that landing page, so the orchestral stuff that I shared right at the top of the landing page of my website is a YouTube video of my favorite highlights from the orchestral music I recorded. All the stuff that I just shared orchestrally is in that video, but you know the longer versions. So if people are interested in that, that's a great place. So the mystical music, I all this stuff that I just shared is on an album called Relaxing on Spotify. So if you just type in my name and the Spotify, it's the Relaxing album.
Beautiful.
And I just, yeah, as I mentioned earlier, I launched my Patreon, and I'm really excited about that because this is where I get to engage with my community of people who are supporting me. And um, I didn't mention this, but for 14 years, I ran a software company. That was my career, and I sold that company 2 years ago. And when I did that, my intention was I realized that I wanted to follow my passion more. And I also mentioned this idea of being an imposter. And so I had some of my own blocks to work with in terms of like daring to believe I could pursue music. And since that time, I've really am embracing it. It's a continuing journey, but the Patreon is one of these vehicles that I'm putting out there where people can support me on this journey. And because I realize it's not something I can do on my own, and so that's my way of asking for help. So if people are interested in what I'm doing and want to support, Patreon is the best way to do that. And you can find that also on ericturnessen.com. It's on there on that landing page.
Wonderful. Well, we'd love to have you back sometime to talk about your journey as far
Yeah.
as, going from the CEO to what you're doing now. We'd love to dive into that with you. If you had a final thought to leave with all of our followers, what would it be?
That.
Love it. That's perfect. Well, thank you so much for joining us today. It was such a pleasure
It really
getting
is.
to talk with you and, getting to
Hear your music.
hear your music. So thank you so much for being with us today.
Yeah,
Yes.
thank you so much. It was a
Thank
pleasure.
you. Come back and see us.
Okay.
And everyone else, we will see you the next time.
You bet.